Pyramidical Podcast, number 2.
All right, this is number 2. So you said that Pyramidical was with a K, and it is with a K, but I was going to put the podcast with a C, just so I can advertise Pyramidical with the C.com.
Okay, so that's clear. That's out of the way.
It's it's not just for advertising. It's to distinguish, because I'm going to talk about non-paranormal stuff. Like, I'm going to do an episode on Back to the Future, the guy that wrote this book called Back to the Future. And it has nothing to do with the occult. It has nothing to do with paranormal. It's talking about fictional time travel. And since I have the C and the K, I can separate them, It's confusing. I'll probably merge them one day.
No, it looks great. I mean, just like the sign alone. I mean, the way it changes colors and things like that. The whole set design. I can see why
the sign is the cheapest part. It costs like nothing to make.
Really?
The sign is just LEDs you can buy on the internet, and the LED package for all of the LED lights that change colors. The entire package was like $17.
No way! Oh my god!
And,
I think the way you did it, and some people just can't conceive that one person can do this stuff, and so like my friends are just like, oh, he's getting paid by somebody. Somebody's paying him to do this stuff and discredit the whole paranormal. I swear to God, I'm getting this.
People tell me that all the time, but they tell me I'm a disinformation agent. You know what I mean? I wish I was. Yeah. Because, first of all, I believe in what I'm talking about, so I wouldn't be against them asking, and also I'd make a lot more money than... all I make is AdSense money.
Yeah, but you're definitely not a disinformation agent. I can vet for you, man. I'm very new to the whole paranormal thing, so like, I call it the politics of the paranormal, And like, you're just a regular dude, man, that does this for fun and also for the truth. And when I saw the Montauk thing, because I'm friends with Peter and things like that, and he's an interesting guy. We'll maybe talk about that or not. But when I saw the Montauk thing video that you did, it was really great because you had the books that you had. I remember those days in like the late 90s, mid to late 90s, where you had to go to Barnes & Noble, and if they didn't have it on the shelf, you had to go up to the counter and say, can you order this for me? And then they would order it and then like a week later you get it or whatever. And you still have those 5 books.
Yeah, I still have them,
And like the whole thing is a hoax, and like pretty much,
I read the first Montauk book when I was in high school, and because I read an excerpt on the internet. This was in the early days of the internet. They had like 3 chapters you could read for free, or maybe 1 chapter, whatever it was. It was a good amount of text.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. It was more entertaining than other books out there. So as much as the Montauk Project is most definitely a hoax, it's an entertaining story. So at least the guy put efforts into it being interesting, and it's believable because they put, here's a document here, here's this. I don't know why people think it's believable. If you really use common sense, it's the most unbelievable thing.
Well, they connect it to like Einstein and the Philadelphia experiment and like real people, like just because it took place there and stuff like that, and the whole history of Camp Hero. But I thought, your research, you're so good at like, I could have emailed people too, but like you emailed the people the military people that, like you said, have nothing to gain or lose from their testimonies, and they were the last people that were there, and nothing was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was easy to track them down. It's a radar squadron. See, that's a radar base. That base was probably most used in World War II with the radar stations, because it's on Long Island. It's on the perfect area to, if anything's coming, they're the first people to know. And I searched the radar squadron, and I found the official alumni webpage for every military squadron. And then I went down the list and I clicked on it, and there was like 10 members from Montauk Air Force Base. And I emailed all of them. And 2 or 3 of them responded, and I was surprised. And they were really nice about it. And I guess, if there was an underground base, then that would be one thing that would cause me to say, maybe there's something. But there's no underground base. It's literally bedrock that has never been dug. And if the second you dig that bedrock, the ocean would start flooding because it's right there on top of the ocean, basically.
Yes. There's a place like that near me called Fort Adams in Newport, and it's one of the McKinley forts. And President McKinley, like after the Civil War of 1812, built like these coastal forts, and I think Camp Hero was one of them originally. But there's like these creepy catacombs in there, but there's no like experiments or anything like that being done. But it's really cool. You've got to hop a fence. I used to do it in high school. Go with a flashlight underneath these crazy catacombs, and they're tunnels, and they're secret passageways that lead out to like an escape route to the ocean. You know what I mean?
Oh, cool.
So yeah, there's water there.
Yeah, but nothing like elaborate, like right?
Like a chair, or I know it's ridiculous. And the thing is, it's like Peter Moon. When I brought up Richard Hoagland, when I was on his show, I was like, oh yeah, because Peter Moon's been going to Romania and talking about Dracula and stuff like that, and he has a whole like Transylvanian Sunrise series and stuff like that. I mean, for entertainment, it's pretty good. But like he says, there's a holographic chamber inside the Romanian Sphinx. It barely looks like a Sphinx. Okay, from one angle, it kind of looks like the old man in the mountain used to be in New Hampshire. But it's like, anyway, he says there's a hall of records in there. It's a holographic. And Hoagland was like, when I hear Peter Moon, I raise my eyebrows, and so I was like, okay, and I went on to talk about like other stuff, but like he was pretty interested. Like, I'm so glad he's still on the air too. It's like he's
that's cool.
He's a hero. He's cool. He's a good guy. Even though like you're right, he looks into the 19.5 thing a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, Peter Moon is he kind of like. I would talk to Peter Moon on the phone for like 3-4 hours. And he would just stay on the phone with me and talk to me and talk about, all these different people. Oh, I have some Richard Hoagland stories. All right. Like he was a Scientologist, like in the early days. And I would talk to him about that. No. There's a book called Eyes Wide Open, written by the guy that co-wrote the screenplay with Stanley, which is based on Trauma Novelle, which is like a German book called means dream story or something like that. And it's just a thin novella. And it's about basically, you can see how it's very similar. And there's actually a 1969 German movie made on that book, Trauma Novelle. Anyway, in the book Eyes Wide Open, which is written by the guy that did the screenplay with Kubrick, he says that Scientology was one of the biggest, like Stanley like intentionally was trying to push Tom Cruise's buttons, and I think Christiana kind of the clip that I sent to you on the Toronto Film Festival thing kind of points that out. She kind of hints at that, her and her brother Jan Harlan, who worked with Kubrick on like every film he made almost, And they say, well, there you have two of the biggest Scientology people, the power couple of Scientology there. And like, I guess they were surrounded by an entourage of Scientology people. Kubrick had to put them in the movie and stuff like that. So I got to get that book, man. I've only read a little bit of it, but it seems like a really good research.
Oh, yeah, I haven't read that or seen the movie, so I'll check that out too. Sounds pretty good. Yeah,
definitely good. All right. So
the Necronomicon is
Necronomicon.
That's going to be probably the main. I mean, it doesn't matter what the main topic is, but
it's a good name. Yeah.
So tell us about the Necronomicon. What do you like?
All right. Well, from my point of view, the Necronomicon is just it's a fictional story. It's a fictional book that H.P. Lovecraft made up in one of his stories, his fictional stories. I think it first appeared. I don't want to get this wrong, but it may have been the Call of Cthulhu, or maybe even the Beast of the Cave. One of his earliest stories. He lists all these different real grimoires, which just means grammar in French, and it's just basically grimoire is kind of like a spell book. So you'd have, like, back in the day, you would have the Enochian keys that John Dee and Edward Kelly used, and they would use that language and create sort of like incantations so they could automatically write things and stuff like that, right? So Lovecraft's grandfather was a Freemason in the Memphis Rite of Misery, which is an Egyptian Freemason thing. You have to go to Egypt and all that stuff. I have like family that are Freemason. I'm not a Freemason, but my dad, or my brother for that matter. But my cousin is, my uncle is. Like, I found this out way later. All of them have connections. My family has connections. We'll get into that later, but they're all have a history of this stuff. And so the Necronomicon, Lovecraft, you can imagine a young Lovecraft at like 15, he inherits his grandfather's, who was a really big industrialist. He like built half of Providence, you know what I mean, which is near me. So he inherits this library, this Freemasonic library that has all these amazing, like crazy texts in it, you know, that like, oh my God, like, you know, here are the Enochian keys of magic and Le Grand Grimoire, and all, I mean, he lists all these different things, but he puts them in his fictional stories. So, like, okay, the Grand Grimoire really does exist. There's the Enochian keys of magic. That is a real text. I can go to the library and get it, right back there and get it, you know. And then he introduces his own fictional meta narrative book, which is the Necronomicon, and it's just a fictional thing. It's not. It's just like it's as if, like in Harry Potter, if you have Hogwarts. He also invents schools like Miskatonic University, okay? It sounds like a very real university. In fact, when I put on my Facebook profile that I am a professor of philology at Miskatonic University, my aunt was like, "Congratulations, Brandon." I was like, "Auntie Donna." I'm like, "Auntie Donna, that's not right. No. It's just a fictional thing. That's like saying Hogwarts." She was like, "Congratulations anyway, yeah." I was like, what are people? People are just crazy these days, so they believe whatever it is. And so the same thing with the Necronomicon. Someone saw that and was like, oh, let's see if the Necronomicon really exists. And yeah, there are different things for necromancy, which is raising the dead from the grave or whatever, or a spirit. And yeah, that's a tradition, but there's no book called Necronomicon anywhere. And so then fans of H.P. Lovecraft make their own and write their own and say, oh, this was a book from that was written by the mad Arab Abdul Arahaz or whatever, you know. And it's if you even look at it, according to them, if you look at this sigil right here, you're cursed for your life. You know, it's dangerous. I'll get into this book in a minute, but yeah, like, it's just ridiculous. So people did this for a while. There was no connection to it whatsoever, except, and there was no connection to House of Crowley at all, you know, there at all. So along comes the inheritor of there were a lot of, when House of Crowley died, a lot of people, now we're moving ahead some years, the magician, whatever, black magician, OTO, member name, who claimed to be the inheritor of Aleister Crowley, named Kenneth Grant, and kind of took up the mantle. Said he took up the mantle, just like L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons did in Pasadena. Took up the mantle of Crowley and led the OTO or whatever. Kenneth Grant was really interested in Lovecraft, and so he combines Crowley and Lovecraft and he creates his own Typhonian trilogies, is what he calls it. But he also takes things from Voodoo, and it's so hard to understand. I studied James Joyce and Finnegan's Wake, and that is such a tough book. It's such a dense, linguistically dense book, and it's barely in English, but it has layers and it's a lot of fun. But it's a fictional book. So yeah, Necronomicon is a fake book.
Yeah.
But so Kenneth Grant puts these things together. What the problem is that these books that Kenneth Grant wrote are extremely rare and hard to find. Maybe not so much with the internet now, but back in the day, I remember walking into Shakespeare and Company in France, in Paris, France, right? And I was there with my girlfriend, and we went to Rome and all these different places for kind of like a holiday, and we went into Shakespeare and Company because that's where James Joyce, was like, spent his life and wrote his books. And I'm walking in there, and I said, okay, money is no object. I was like, I want your rarest, most occult, most secret books. I just started getting into my uncle's a Freemason? No, what does that mean? I had no idea. So I was like, and they said, okay. And they went back. And they took up these giant volumes and put them down, and they were Kenneth Grant books, and I was like, okay, I'll come back. I didn't buy them because they were like $10,000 or something like that, right? And like ridiculous amount of money, not that much, but like still for a book, it was ridiculous. So not so many people had access to this information, the Kenneth Grant's Typhonian trilogy, which was with Tantra and sex magic rituals and things like that, all combined with Lovecraft. So now all of a sudden, Lovecraft is combined with the occult, sort of magical Aleister Crowley side. Okay. Now we go ahead a little bit to like the 60s or 50s, 60s. You have Peter Lavenda come on the scene, okay? And Peter Lavenda, and I'm not trying to diss him in any way, but I think he's a pretty good author. He's written Unholy Alliance, which is about the Nazis with the Vatican and all this stuff. Rat Lines, a lot of books on magic and things like that. But he had a very interesting life. He said that he was a spy for. He was basically a spy. When he was 17 in the Bronx, he and his friend put on Eastern Orthodox priest outfits with the big hat and everything, and they snuck into RFK's wake at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. Now, back in those days, that wouldn't happen these days. There'd be all kinds of checks. But if you showed up with a funny hat, like in a priest, like you were a religious guy, they just let you in. And apparently they let him and his friend in. And he was trying to avoid the draft. The Vietnam War was starting to kick around, so he was trying to avoid the draft. And one of the ways was to start your own religion. So he started his own. He and his friend started his own religion. And it was this weird Eastern Orthodox sect that he had nothing to do with. He ended up getting involved because New York City, is an interesting place. Like a block away, you have a lot of different weird people. It's kind of like Los Angeles and things like that, but more condensed. And so he ended up bumping into some occult bookstores and this guy Wasserman, and people that are into the OTO and way into Aleister Crowley and think they're Aleister Crowley and things like that. And so he had read Lovecraft, he had read Necronomicon. The allusions to it, that the whispers that there might really be a Necronomicon out there. And so what he did was, and I will create this Necronomicon, because he had access to the Kenneth Grant books. Because this book dealer had them, and I know these book dealers, in New York City, they're like book dealers and drug dealers at the same time, and they're into and they're into weird stuff. Anyway, so he gets those books, and I think what happened was he wanted to add an extra layer to the Lovecraft, because there's a bunch of Lovecraft fans out there, and I salute them. They're really cool. They're very good, set of artists and comedians even, and impersonators and writers and comic book people. I mean, everybody is influenced by H.P. Lovecraft in some way, knowingly or unknowingly, right? So anyway, I think that's how he came up with this book right here, which is the Necronomicon Avon Press series, okay?
Yeah.
And this came out 1977, okay? 1977.
Same year as Star Wars, huh?
Yep, I guess. And then this one was from 1980, which is another Star Wars. But dedication is to the 100th anniversary of the nativity of the poet Aleister Crowley, 1875 to 1975. Ad memoriam Cthulhu gloriam. Okay, so some Latin phrase. It just makes it very mystical. Okay, and if you go through the book, basically what this Simon, okay, is trying to do, and this is a person that claims to have written this book, the Necronomicon. Oh no, I'm sorry. He translated the book, the Necronomicon. This is the story of the Necronomicon, or of Peter Lavenda. It's such a hard story to unravel, hoax to unravel, but it's a hoax. But it's a good one. He takes this book, the Necronomicon, that's already out there in people's minds, okay, because of H.P. Lovecraft, and they might think, oh, there might be really a Necronomicon, who knows, you know? And sure enough, like, he says, okay, we really found the real Necronomicon written by Abdul Arahaz, or Aramens, or whatever, and the Mad Arab is what he was named, and he went mad writing the Necronomicon. And it's a bunch of incantations for like gates and things like that. You know, you have things like invocation of the Nana gates, and I mean, there are things that are actually really steeped in real mythology. That's the thing. It's a smart book because it's steeped in myth, like Sumerian myth and stuff like that. So, and even on the very first page, they're kind of giving you a hint. It's, you know, they take Aleister Crowley's writings, Sumerian legend, H.P. Lovecraft's writings, Kenneth Grant writings. It's just like, it's a whole pot of melting pot of like mythology, you know, and it's just a little, you know, dreidel is scooped out of there. So, and they pour it on here, and it's just weird. It's very. It reminded me of James Joyce, The Finnegan's Wake, because it makes almost no sense. Let me just read like a little at random, a little incantation. The conjuration of the binding of the evil sorcerers. Aliku nashi ila mutatashi itakuna alila mushashi kalala kuralaka. You know, this is like crazy speed. And the thing is that in the Call of Cthulhu, there is no right way or wrong way to pronounce Cthulhu. It's Cthulhu, you know, or Cthulhu. You're supposed to Cthulhu, you know, kind of like the throaty sound. That's what Lovecraft kind of wanted, but it's just so random, and it's just hard to. And I can see why the Lovecraftians dismissed this book, the Avon Press Necronomicon, because they couldn't understand it. No one could understand it. When I took a class at Mythgard Institute, when I just started getting into Lovecraft, they said, you know, I asked about this. I said, what about this Necronomicon? And they said, oh yeah, somebody, it was, you couldn't understand it. It was just gibberish. My teacher called it gibberish, okay? But I had it. I knew it wasn't just gibberish. So anyway, this guy gets the Necronomicon. This is the story. He gets the Necronomicon and has to translate it from ancient Greek or something like that to English. So you and me could read it. And this person was Simon, this mysterious Simon. It's not Peter Lavenda, Simon. So, okay, whatever. So, I found out, I mean, I was a late comer to the game, so I found out that this book, the Necronomicon, Simon, I'm thinking, wait a second, because what I also picked up...
It's officially anonymous, so it's kind of it's a pain to look for S in the book section, because people usually never put it under S, because a lot of copies don't even say Simon on it. And I guess they put it under N. I don't know, you know.
Oh, I don't know what they put it under.
I found a copy in the, I guess, horror section.
Really? Yeah, it makes sense. You know,
I bought it for $1, and I sold it literally like 24 hours later for $7. So
wow.
it's a very popular book. I mean, I would have put it for 10 if I knew it was that popular. You know.
Right.
But
some people I know, like I know Flint, my friend Nick, for example. He had this book for like since he was a kid. Mm-hmm. You know, according to my friend Douglas Dietrich, there is a psychiatric like help crisis group, therapy group for kids that were doing incantations about this Simon Necronomicon.
Was this in the 70s or 80s though?
No, this is still going on today.
Well,
People still take this seriously.
I mean, are they the type of people that react over Harry Potter, or?
Yeah, probably like the same type of people. But like, you know, Harry Potter, that's a really interesting topic. I would love to talk about Harry Potter, but because it's very interesting, the words and everything. But yeah, I mean, it could be. But I have seen people. I mean, it would drive you mad. This book is supposed to drive you mad, and that all goes back to a concept by Robert Chambers, who Lovecraft was influenced by. Mm-hmm. He had a book called The Yellow Sign, The Yellow King. It's really cool because, like, if you look at it, if you open up she had saw the yellow sign, and the yellow sign just immediately, as soon as it's kind of like the ring or whatever. When you see the screen, you see the symbol, you will automatically go insane, you know, or you die within 24 hours or something like that. Like, it's supposed to be like that. So you're not supposed to have it out. It's cursed, but I've had it out. I'm not, you know, cursed or anything like that. So anyway,
can I tell you? Yeah. I mean, you told me something I didn't know. What grimoire means? Is it French for grammar, or is that what you said?
Yeah. For grammar, just means grammar.
I never knew that. But grimoire to me, because I didn't know what that meant, so I had to formulate what it meant to me. I never looked it up. But I have 2 grimoires right here. I've never worked through them, anything like that. I just buy them to sell them.
Wow, yeah.
I have the Sacred Book of Magic by Abramelin the Mage. It's a pretty popular, famous one that has these magic squares.
Magic squares, yeah.
And the magic square in this book is probably the equivalent to a sigil that you find more in the Necronomicon. So this is the Grimoire of Armadale, very similar to the Goetia, except these are angel sigils supposedly. Okay. And I noticed the Necronomicon has sigils and it has gates.
Yes, and like all kinds of gates. I mean, if you go through it, there's all kinds of graphics and gates that are 3-dimensional and things like that.
See, okay, and, even though some dude obviously made those gates up, I don't want to talk about this guy too much, but you've probably heard of E.A. Koetting, right?
Yes.
E.A. Koetting is pretty rich and famous concerning black magic. There aren't too many black magic magicians that 100% that's all they do. You know, is magic. I mean, he doesn't have a side job. He said he quit his side job because this black magic job pays so well. Now, I'm sure he's not rich, but he owns a middle-class house, probably, and that's pretty good for 100%. I mean, not good in a religious context, but good in prosperous, you know. But he said his entire startings and beginnings was when he was homeless and he was reading the Necronomicon. So he pretty much pays all of his success to incantations that he performed with the Necronomicon. Now, I've watched a lot of his videos, and he said pretty much his first successful spell was drawing a gate in a graveyard, and he got sucked into it. He got sucked into another dimension. He said his physical body didn't go, but it's like he left his body, had an out-of-body experience. Like a demon pulled him through this gateway, and he was able to walk and talk with entities dressed in robes or whatever the case may be. So even though some dude probably drew those gates, because of how the occult works, if you have the intention of communicating with demons, they'll definitely want to communicate with you, even if it's through a fake gate, through a fake book. So I think that's interesting, you know.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that was the design of that book, is to people would actually do these types of things. And like, you know, Lovecraft had a story called Dreams in the Witch House, which takes place in Salem. And it's funny because as I'm reading this, it was so coincidental and synchronistic with my life, because, you know, I lived in a house that was owned by a witch. I lived near Salem and stuff like that. Yeah, and like he talks about non-Euclidean geometries. So like, you know, the style of your house and stuff, the odd angles and things like that. Like they're supposed to, like, you know, if you draw, like you said, like if you go to a graveyard, I guess. But you could also, in this story, the witch had escaped her hanging by drawing odd non-Euclidean, basically sigils, on her roof, and had escaped through the portal. And so this guy, he's just a student, and he's a student of science and of like religion. So that's what like Crowley's goal was to merge science and religion. We have no something pigeon, virgin and pigeon. Our aim is science, our goal is religion. It was one of Aleister Crowley's poems. But like, yeah, people really believe in this stuff and they try it out. And like in their minds, like, yeah, maybe it works for them or something, or they say it works, you know, and then people love to believe that story. But what exposed the Necronomicon for me as a hoax was that this, before I even picked up this book or had even really heard about it, I had picked up this book, which has no, I mean, I wish I had the cover on it because it's Baphomet, but in like an astrological thing. But this is an actual work by Peter Lavenda way after the Necronomicon. This is called The Dark Lord. H.P. Lovecraft, Kenneth Grant, and the Typhonian Tradition in Magic by Peter Lavenda, prefaced by James Wasserman, who is like, I think the head of the OTO in New York City or something like that. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, now this guy, Peter Lavenda, is combining Crowley, Kenneth Grant, H.P. Lovecraft, okay, and putting them all together, and Houdon, and like all these different mythological traditions. And I'm saying to myself, wow, okay, yeah, pretty good. He makes some interesting correlations, but isn't it such a coincidence that people are saying that he was the person, and he admits that he was helping with the Necronomicon book?
Yeah, I have a theory about that, but keep.
Tell
us your theory.
No, right.
Well, my theory is just off the top because I just looked at his Wikipedia page yesterday. So your theory is actually more formulated. I don't want to. You can give your theory. You want me to tell you?
No, my theory is that Simon is Peter Lavenda, and that there's no way that somebody could write the Dark Lord and have access to the Kenneth Grant and super like hard to get OTO and free Masonic materials and write the Necronomicon. I mean, there are even pages in here that like have the same sort of timbre and cadence and rhythm as the Dark Lord does. And like, you know, it takes a certain mind to put all those things together. How could someone do it? I mean, he's making, and also, so the Lovecraftians, the so scholarly ones anyway, won't touch this book. And I've looked, and they should, and I might be the first to be doing this, is touch this book, The Dark Lord. They don't look at it. And this is a book that was released in 2009, okay? And it's like a deep book, because 2013, excuse me. And so it's fairly recent. And like any Lovecraft thing, I mean, there was a letter that was discovered by Lovecraft, because he was so voluminous in his letters. He wrote over 100,000 letters in his 48 years. Wow. He was just constantly writing, you know. And but anyway, so there's still, you know, he's digging up stuff from him. But yeah, so my theory basically is just that Peter Lavenda, the Simon guy, is Peter Lavenda, and that's pretty much confirmed because there's an old Coast to Coast show that had Peter Lavenda on it, and maybe we could provide the link in the YouTube section or whatever. But it has a link to the Coast to Coast show, and they're interviewing Simon, the guy behind this Avon Press Necronomicon.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's Peter Lavenda, you can obviously hear him. He's talking like this, but it is Peter Lavenda. And then and you can tell the coast to coast guy is like, "Are you Peter Lavenda?" And he's like, "No, I know Peter, but he is a good man." and then later on, which is really funny, right? He's like, "Well, wasn't his friend the homosexual?" And Lavenda was they were both gay and stuff. And the guy gets really defensive, and he's like, "No. The friend was homosexual. Lavenda not homosexual." You know. So like, it's
how would
like,
he know
whoa.
this? You know, he's like an expert on Lavenda.
Right, and then the kind of smoking gun was the title of registration for the Avon Press Necronomicon book, because you got to actually, to publish this, you have to put a name to it and everything. Yeah. And who was on that name, on that title, but Peter Lavenda.
Yeah.
So I mean, in the preponderance, in you know, this is beyond, like, even if you were to take it to like criminal court, you know, you go by the burden of proof. In each case, criminal or civil, but the preponderance of evidence is just stacked against them, you know, and everybody asked, even Sean Stone, who has a show, Lit TV or something like that, he did an interview with Lavenda. First question he asked him was, "Are you Simon from Necronomicon?" And he just smiles and says, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not."
Well, you know, my theory is this, and it's out there. You might totally disagree, that's fine. And I just came up with it yesterday when I was looking at I just clicked on Necronomicon on Wikipedia, and they do list Peter Lavenda as the most likely candidate for Simon. So I clicked on his Wikipedia, and it said that he admitted he helped Simon write it, right?
Right.
Now, like you said, he always denies, "No, I'm not Simon. No, I'm not Simon. No, I'm not Simon." The only way he can be telling the truth, in this out there theory, now I guess there's other options, but in my theory, Simon is a demonic entity or a spirit, and he helped him write it. No, most definitely, because this spirit channeled through him either automatic writing or more likely it could have been Crowley-ish, where Crowley's guardian angel is in the corner of the room. And that's how Crowley wrote, you know, his most famous work. What's it called?
Liber Allegius, the Book of the Law. Yeah.
Book of the Law, yeah. So Crowley, I don't want to talk about Crowley too much, but
right.
Crowley claims that the voice came from the corner of the room.
Oh, yeah.
And that even he didn't know if he was in his head or not, because the voice had a British accent. Now that's... it's almost as if it's over the top. The demon trying to fool anyone in the future, saying it wasn't Crowley's imagination, because why would Crowley imagine a demon with a British accent when he's British? But that's the type of elaborate trick a demonic entity is going to play.
Sure.
And I don't know if Simon's a demon or not, but
that's a good theory, man.
The guy pretending he's not Simon, or the guy pretending he doesn't know who Simon is, even though he co-wrote it with him, that's an occult. Right. That's an occult type of thing. He's trying to hide it. Anything that's obviously not hiding for good reasons is occult. That's the definition of occult, you know. Absolutely. And I think there's a possible chance that it was channeled, or just maybe the demon's like, "You draw some crappy pictures of gates, whatever. Here's some information of a backstory. Just throw in this mad Arab story, and
sure.
Who knows? You know, that's just a guess. I
totally agree with you, man. And like when I'm writing, maybe we could get into like how Peter Lavenda talks about my family too, and writes about them, but. My family was famous for this stuff, for like occult seances and things like that, which is weird because I never was into any of that. And but I can totally see isn't that like the perfect alibi? Like you just like, I didn't know. Of course I didn't write it. You know, I could honestly say to you, John, I didn't write the Necronomicon. The demon wrote it. You know what I mean? Like that's the perfect alibi. So you could see how he could perpetuate. Man, that's a good theory, man.
You know, I personally believe demons are legitimately intelligent entities in the higher dimension, but even if he's an atheist, he could rationalize it away, because atheists demon believers, they just believe it's part of their subconscious in some higher level or whatever.
Yep.
And he could totally rationalize it. And but
Yeah.
I do believe there are a number of books that are written with the help of invisible entities, whether you think they're real or not. And, it's pretty scary stuff. I'm doing an episode in the future on the fifth dimension, because I think, obviously, we don't know hardly anything about the fifth dimension. So I'm just going to throw some theories out there. And one of my theories is demons live in the fifth dimension. That's just my theory.
Now, a lot of people say, okay, we're in the third dimension. I don't get the dimension thing.
Well,
so
that's why I'm making a video. I'm gonna preface the first, the second, the third, and the fourth, and then I'll make my theory on the fifth. We know about the four, but something that bothers me is physicists, scientists. They always confuse the fourth dimension. They confuse the crap out of it to the point where nobody understands, where no one can get past the confusion of the fourth. So,
string theory.
So no one thinks about the fifth, other than quantum physicists, because regular Joe Schmo can't even get past the idiotic interpretation of the fourth.
Absolutely. It's so confusing.
I can give a very clear example of the fourth. We are fourth dimensional beings. We're in the fourth dimension right now. You can't be in the third dimension and move. A third dimensional entity can't move because time and space is in the fourth. Mm-hmm. And so if you can move around, you are a fourth dimensional being or higher.
Wow.
And the fifth dimension looks down on us similar to how we would look down at an amoeba. And amoeba are so thin, we can see through their entire body. There's nothing an amoeba can hide. They can see right through us. And I'm going to talk about that in a future episode about the attributes of demons. Now, I've studied demons for the past, I don't know, I guess 4 years. Ever since I met one or two or three. And after you meet one, now I didn't see it, and I'm glad I didn't see it because I wouldn't want to be able to see one. You know what I mean? But I could see the attributes. For example, I was haunted by poltergeist for 6 months. Now, it sounds like a joke, but I told Art Bell about it, and he never replied because maybe he gets. This was when his show was still on the air. It's too bad he's off the air.
Yeah.
But I told a couple select few people about it, and then I decided to make a couple videos about it because it happened in 2011, and if I keep it a secret forever and then spontaneously start talking about it, people will say, "Oh, you're a big fat liar."
I have the same problem, man. Yep.
Yeah. But I'm gonna go into detail. I haven't told everything about it, and it's nothing phenomenal. Nothing. It's not
a movie or something.
It's not a movie where there's tons of crime scenes and dead bodies or anything like that.
Right.
But it really happened, and it ticks me off that probably 75% of the people, if not 85 or 95, don't believe me. They think I'm a liar.
Right.
So,
and that's sad, man, because I believe you, because I also, the only reason why I pick up books like this and are into these subjects and things like that, and I wasn't for a very long time because I met a demon. Now, I lived in a haunted house. My parents got this house when I was 12 years old. Okay, now I was studying Zazen meditation and Buddhist meditate at that age. I was a martial artist. I was taking Tai Chi. And at that age, I was very into this thing, and I could actually have an energy ball in the palm. It was this magnetic force. I don't know, I can still kind of do it. It's weird.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
I was practicing this thing, and before I even. Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
I heard about that in when I read a couple martial art books. So that's a legitimate martial art that you're talking about. So what happened?
Cheese.
Yeah.
So even before I even moved, because I was I played basketball. Some friends knew me. These kids from Berkeley, and I was moving to Berkeley, and they said, "Oh, you're moving to the haunted house." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." You know what I mean? That makes no sense. I moved there, and they're like, "Brandon's in the haunted house." I'm like, "Whatever." Nothing happened. I didn't notice anything. Life went on. But I kept on meditating and things like that. And in 8th grade, so 2 years go by, 8th grade, my friend gets a Ouija board for a present, okay? Now, and because at the bidding of this girl who said she was in contact with this entity named Lisa, she gave it a name and everything, that was at my house, okay? Now, I'm going to sound like a fool and everything. I know it involves a Ouija board, but this really happened, and it scared me so much that I stayed away. We had to bury the Ouija board and all this stuff. And he got it we took it out on his birthday. And, we were just eighth grade, so I slept over at his house. And we were doing it, like, around the adults, right? As soon as we got it, we opened it, like, oh, let's do it right now, see if it works. And it didn't. It wasn't working. We were like really trying. Okay, we'll try to meditate. It wouldn't work. His father was there, and he was like, oh well. They all went. The parents went to bed. At around 11 o'clock or something like that, we busted it out, and it was dark, and only the TV was on. So let's get the Ouija board, okay? And for a minute or two, like we're like, is anybody there and stuff like that? Nothing happened. And we were like kind of pressing down on it, kind of hard. And then all of a sudden, man, it started to move, and like I didn't even have to touch it. Like if this was, I don't even know the name of the thing that comes with the Ouija board. It looks like this kind of, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
a push thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I forget the name of it. It was invented around here, but I forget the name of it by the famous sisters. I forget the name, but anyway, that thing you barely have to touch it. I was barely touching it, and it was moving all around the board, and I would answer. It knew me. Its name was Lisa. It would spell Lisa. No, I didn't believe in any of that, But so it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It pretended that it was my. It could call on our relatives and stuff like that. So my friend's grandfather just died, and he said, "Is my grandfather there?" And he had a conversation with his we were barely touching this job. Like to actually make it move, like we barely had to touch it. Like it was just moving on its own. So that scared the heck out of us. We like never told. Everybody thought we were crazy, except for these 2 girls who knew it already before I'd even moved to the house. So I go back to my house, and that wasn't good. That we call on this entity, and I'm meditating one day. And it's summertime, so mom's off to work, parents are gone, I have the house to myself, blasting the music. I think the Beatles Anthology 2 had just come out, so I'm blasting the instrumental versions, all sitar and Indian music to Within Without You, the song Within Without You. So it's like right, and it kind of builds up. It was on repeat, and I didn't hit it on repeat, I just hit play. But so I'm meditating to that music. I thought it was, this is pretty groovy, And I'm doing the energy ball thing, which is a legitimate thing. And I'm trying to go astral and stuff and look down at my body, which is a legitimate thing, man. It can happen. I've had that direct experience. All of a sudden, man, the energy ball, because, this thing, you're supposed to play with the chi energy ball, this aura. It's like this thing, almost like the size of that orb that you have behind you. And so it's like a magnetic force. And if you really concentrate, you can play around it, but this time it just got out of control to the point where my arms, I couldn't even contain it. I was like this. My arms spread like this as wide as I could, and I was going like this. I was gyrating, and then I realized, whoa, I'm in a trance. Sitar music is playing. Like 20 minutes went by, and I wasn't. It was like I wasn't there. I couldn't snap out of dong da dong dong dong, and it was just like building up. It was crazy, and I was like, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, Brandon, get out of here, get out, release yourself or something. I couldn't. Finally, I broke out of it, and I went, whoa, I was like, and I screamed. I was like, get out, and I ran out of the house, which was on a horse farm, and ran into the woods. and it was raining that day. I remember it was raining that day, and I sat in the rain in the woods and waited till my mom came home.
Wow.
It's because I was too scared, and I've never talked about it. I don't talk about it now.
I mean, thanks for sharing. I mean, I could cut it out if you don't want me to, but that's a great story. That's a great story.
Maybe. But
No, I don't.
Whatever.
I mean,
you shared yours, so I mean, we could.
I could share more details on mine if you want me to. Because
here's my question, man. Like, I understand, like, it sounds crazy, man, and I know, like, everybody says nowadays, everybody's saying it and things. I believe you, man. I really do, and I know mine sounds a little crazy and a little bit yours, like a movie.
Yours has some hallmarks of authentic.
Does it?
Because trance. I would say trance is the number one way to connect yourself with the realm of these entities.
Corners.
Corners. I could tell you about corners.
I found out a thing about Hitler. Hitler was into trance and into corners.
Wow. Well,
he would go and look at a corner for like. Well, you ever see school kids? They put a cap on you and make you look in a corner. How crazy is that? All right,
I can tell you this book is evil. Don't use it. It's an evil grimoire. I bought it.
I can tell by the first word on it.
I bought it on Amazon, not knowing what it was. I bought it on Amazon, thinking, here's a book I'll buy and sell. So I bought two, and somehow I got one for free. I don't know. Anyway,
no way.
It's like $100 book. But that's the only reason I still have it, because it's probably a little bit hard to sell it. I haven't listed that one. I did sell the other one pretty fast.
Right.
But that book, the only way to get that book to work is trance. You have to be in a trance.
Wow.
And not very few people know that, so I'm not going to go into detail. But I don't recommend trance. I mean, I don't.
No,
what happened to you is you got in a natural trance, which is normal with music like that. It's totally normal. There's nothing evil about getting in a trance from listening to some cool music, but that's when they can see you. That's when they can manipulate you. It's almost as if when we're not in a trance, they really can't do much. So it's almost like we're in a vibration where they can even tangibly even contact us. We almost have to be in a trance.
Right.
But in my scenario, what happened to me was I was not in a trance. I'm just drawing this conclusion now, but I think it's pretty rare, because when I was poltergeist haunted, I would say 9 times out of 10 I was wide awake and doing something. Mm-hmm. The one time I was attacked, I was close to going to sleep. I'd turn off the light, and 10 seconds later it attacked me. But I could imagine I might have been close to a trance-like state, but I wasn't. But
you're on the borderline of like that sleep dream state.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Speaking of the borderline, I'll talk about this in a future episode because it's too lengthy. But I've heard the astral plane. Have you ever heard it before?
Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. When I go to sleep, and it's so rare, I don't have the gift. I don't do it on purpose. It's always an accident. Mm-hmm. I hear the astral plane at least 2 times a year.
You hear it?
Maybe 3 times a year, at most.
You hear it?
I hear it when I'm going to bed or waking up. Either going to bed or waking up. Accidentally, I'll get in that REM type sleep where I'm still conscious, like a lucid dream type thing.
Yep.
And I don't see anything. I'm still conscious. All I see is pitch black. But I hear the astral plane.
Whoa.
And I can describe...
What does it sound like?
Well, it always sounds different, but I described it to someone, and they I said, what does it sound like to you? And they described it better than me. Because they gave a bit generic, but I'll tell you what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a cacophony of a million sounds at once.
Right.
It's a million sounds taking place at the same time, and occasionally you'll hear a sound that's louder than the others. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like every sound that ever happened in that room in the history of the universe from A to Z. That's what it sounds like.
Wow.
So it doesn't sound like anything. It's almost like white noise, very loud. And then you'll hear when I was in this one room in California, it's not the poltergeist room. It's the room I moved in. I obviously didn't want to be haunted anymore.
Right.
I only kept that room for 6 months because it was cheap. It was dirt cheap.
Yeah.
It was the cheapest rent in all the city.
For a reason, I guess.
It was maybe. But when I moved out, I went to another room, which was literally a 1 minute drive down the road. And as I was going to sleep or waking up, I started hearing this astral realm.
Cacophony, yeah.
Total. And someone else described it to me like an airplane. It sounds like when you're on an airplane, you hear just that generic sound. But on top of that, you'll hear voices,
once in a while,
music. But in this particular room in California, I heard the white noise, and then I heard pots and pans banging.
Whoa.
And then I heard maybe some faint music. And then I heard one of the best guitar solos I've ever heard in my life.
No way.
It sounded like Jimi Hendrix.
I was just thinking that.
It sounded like Jimi Hendrix sitting in a room by himself, just riffing the best guitar solo he's ever done in his life. And I was like, whoa, I wish I could record this. This is good. And that was the highest sound I heard. First it was the random, maybe a voice, maybe this, maybe pots and pans. And then the guitar solo was the loudest one. But other times, it's been voices that you can't understand. Sometimes you can understand them. Sometimes it sounds like a crowd of 1,000 people talking. Sometimes it sounds just like random traffic on a street. It's so random that, but it always has the white noise. It always has that. So that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, my brother, I have an older brother that's like 10 years older than me, and we can talk. This connects to Lavenda too, but it's kind of a lengthy story as well. But he was downstairs in this haunted room in the haunted house on the horse farm I was just telling you about. We moved away from there, so thank God. But anyway, he was downstairs and he told me he came up screaming one time. And it's my older brother, you know, and he's supposed to be the protector and all this stuff. So I was like, Chris, what's wrong, you know? And he's like, Brandon, he's like, there's a ghost here, you know? And he knew nothing about my friends telling me it was haunted or anything like that. And I said, yeah, what happened? And he's like, I was taking a nap downstairs and somebody started tickling me. Okay, and he thought it was me because I was like his little brother. You know, he used to tickle him when I was little. And he's like, get out of here, Brandon! Come on, stop! You know, that's what he said he was doing. He was trying to say, I'm trying to take a nap, and then he heard like a little girl laugh. Like a little girl. I'm not a little girl, obviously. So he was like, he got freaked out about that and like jumped up. When I was down there, I had a similar thing where I heard a girl laugh and I was sleeping, but I couldn't wake up from it. And I kept on hearing a whisper. It started off as a whisper. And like you say, there was some kind of like white noise behind it. But it was like, this was very prominent, but it was a whisper. It was like, peace out. And it got louder and louder and louder and louder until it was, Lisa, and it's giving me its name or something, right? Mm-hmm. I freaked out over that. We ended up doing a registry of deeds. I went down to like the registry of deeds and checked out the history of it and stuff like that. And I always knew that it was blocked off from the horse farm for a reason. It was a very cheap house. We got it really cheap for the type of house it was. Anyway, it had in the backyard, in the acres back there near the tree, one of this big tree, it had 2 gravestones. One big one, it would almost like if there was a massacre, and there was. I'll just get cut to the chase. It was the King Philip's War. It took place there in like 17 whatever, or even maybe before. I forget the name of the year, but it was before the Revolutionary War, so it was 1719, something like that, maybe. I have to check, but there's a whole book about it. But it took place on those lands. And actually, there's a Young's Lane off of King Philip Street, and that's my last name. So anyway, there are 2 women that were slain. There was a woman who was killed and abused and all that stuff by the soldiers in front of the Sakonnet tribe or something like that, one of the local Indian tribes, and they buried her there, and her child. And so, like, maybe, I don't know, and like no one's ever dug up the thing or anything like that, but I found out that after that, like after a certain year, they sectioned off that part of land and made it into a house that they could sell. And then new owners bought the horse farm and we sold it, and they totally demolished the house and stuff like that. So it's still there, but the house isn't. And so I've had experiences like that, man.